Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from simpleprogrammer.com. So I got a treat for you guys today. I actually have an interview with a legend in the programming software development industry. If you know of agile development, you know of Bob Martin, Uncle Bob as he's affectionately called, and he's someone who, if you've read my books, you've no doubt been introduced to him because I always talk about clean code, especially, and agile principles, practices, and patterns. Basically, anything that Uncle Bob has done, I'm always sharing in my books and recommending that you read. So I think you're gonna like what we're gonna talk about today. So thanks for joining, Bob. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, John. I mean, how many times do you have to twist my arm or send me packages of meats and flowers or something to get me to do something? I don't know if you guys know the story, but he wrote me a letter asking me to write a foreword, and I begged away and said, "Oh, I'm so busy, I really can't." And then he started sending me stuff in the mail and packages of stuff. I said, "All right, I'll do the foreword." It worked out pretty well. It's a good book.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was funny. I actually got I really liked the foreword that you wrote because I felt like that really encompassed the spirit of the book, which is, or just kind of like who I am, is like, keep on going, like don't give up. Yep. And it's funny though, but there are some people that took the foreword as a negative thing, like, oh, he just pestered Bob until he did this, and those people are not part of my audience. I'm a very polarizing person on YouTube.
Are you really? Are you polarizing?
Well, but see, you're kind of polarizing too, right? I mean,
little old me, who has no opinions on anything. No, I'm not a polarizing character at all.
You're the only person who I get sucked into the Facebook post. I don't like I don't comment much except to, like, say like one or two things, but you get some long, like, I mean, you really get a lot of people that are very left leaning really agitated.
Well, okay, that does seem to happen, yes. And I also get a few right ones agitated.
Yep, true. So yeah, so I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about what's been going on a little bit with the whole. I noticed it was funny because someone pointed me to a link on your blog post on the social justice war, the SJW thing that you had written. Yes. And the first time I looked at the blog post, I just read it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is interesting, right? And I didn't even notice that there was a link at the top to one of my videos where I was talking about how they had done that thing with November with Douglas Crockford. But then I went back and looked. Someone said, oh yeah, that's cool. He linked to one of your videos, and I was like, oh, I didn't even see that because it was right at the top. So what's the story with that whole thing? What happened there?
I was let's see, where was it? I was at a conference in Greece a few weeks ago, and I met a fellow there that I knew really well, Sandro Mancuso. You probably know or have heard of him. Mm-hmm. He wrote a lovely book on software craftsmanship a while ago, and he and I were sitting down. He started telling me this story of Doug Crockford, and I thought, well, wait a minute, how did that happen? And so I started looking it up when I got home. And then I ran into your post as well, and that kind of triggered me. I thought, well, okay, this is something that has happened to me as well, although not nearly as tragically as with Doug Crockford, if tragic is the right word, but not nearly as dramatically. And I thought, I want to just say something about this, and so I wrote that blog post, and I used wording in there that I don't usually use. I think I was a little more agitated than normal. So I think the blog post caused a fair bit of stir.
Yeah. And what I mean after that blog post, from what I understand, you're getting DDoS'd on your server, and like
it was very interesting. So the whole story I told about Doug Crockford in there is how the guy, out of the blue, gets these people who want him disinvited from a conference, and they're not going to him. They're going to the
Right.
conference organizers. And frankly, I thought the conference people who disinvited him were kind of spineless.
Hmm.
And I said that in my blog post. I would stand behind those words, because you don't just invite someone and then disinvite them without talking to them and trying to get the whole problem resolved. So here are these people going behind the scenes in a sneaky kind of way to affect this guy's career in a negative way. And well, that's just, it's just ugly. And then after that blog post, here they come after me. And I kind of expected that. But,
Right.
past employers of mine start getting phone calls, and I get
Oh,
emails
man.
from these past employers saying, what the hell's going on here, Bob? Why are these people threatening us? And there's
Wow.
other people saying, well, I'm pulling out of any conference that Bob Martin is in, and making these public statements, and I, whoa, and then to top it all off, there's this denial of service attack on cleancoders.com, which
Wow.
was pretty well ineffective. They did manage to fill up a few log files, which I don't do.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to hit my site 1 billion times? Okay, go ahead. I'll delete the log files. Fine, thank you. And it lasted, I guess, a day and a half, and then they got tired and stopped. But it was just silliness, right? They're sitting there banging away. They had obviously recruited a bunch of bots and
Hmm.
just were flailing away at the website. And it's indicative of this attitude that if your cause is just, then law doesn't matter,
Right.
morals don't matter, standards don't matter. You must take down the evildoers at all costs. You must invoke every agency to take down the evil people. And that's not the way our society works.
No, I mean it's funny. I actually did a video a while back on the ends justifying, or the means justifying the ends,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. Like, all if you look historically throughout society, I mean, most of the major quote villains or horrific things that have happened in history have happened because someone thought that the means justified the end, and then by how you implement the means twists your soul almost to some degree, where your ends actually change at the and it's amazing to see that we're in this place now, kind of in society, where people are doing this, that they're using shame and whatever it takes to get their end. It doesn't matter how morally decrepit it is, dehumanizing, a lot of dehumanizing. I just see that all over, and it's scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. And the dehumanizing factor is becoming more intense as I continue to ply the Facebook universe. The number of people who are saying the most extreme and outlandish things is multiplying.
Yeah.
And I had a policy which I upheld for many years, which is that I would not block anyone.
Right.
And I have abandoned that policy. I cannot any longer stand to see some of the posts by people that I respect,
All
people
right.
who have done good things even in our industry, people who in any other circumstance I think I would enjoy being with, but I can't tolerate it any longer. So I've resorted to just turning the faucet off on those people that are so far out that they cannot speak civilly. They cannot be rational in a discussion.
Right. Yeah. It's really amazing. It's funny too. I interviewed James Damore,
Oh
the
yeah.
Agile Manifesto guy. So I interviewed him on this channel, and I got a pretty good amount of backlash from that. I mean, definitely a lot of people unsubscribed, and those were the people that I suppose I don't really want in my audience anyway. But it's just amazing how, like, and it was interesting to see. I mean, people don't realize how bad this is until you're the target of it. Once you become the target of the bullying and the shaming, then people see how it is. And it's so, a lot of people end up cowering to it because because they're like, well, it's not worth my career, or it's not worth my life. I'm not,
Sure.
someone else can fight this battle. And so, yeah, so that's how they win. And it's amazing just to think that we're in this. It's ironic too, because it's usually the same people that are preaching tolerance. They're tolerant of everything except for people who are intolerant, and by their definition, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it is not tolerance to use any means at your disposal to take someone down.
right.
Right. In our society, the way we deal, or the way we should deal with disagreement, is to disagree. The best solution to a bad idea is a better idea. And unfortunately, the folks who are engaging in these tactics apparently don't have a better idea, because they must resort to these subversive tactics instead, which I find puzzling. We've had this society, this Western civil society, for a good long time now, and we've gone through a number of ups and downs and strange gyrations, and we actually fought a war with each other 100 and some odd years ago. But through the 50s and 60s and 70s, it was relatively calm. The 60s were a pretty bad era, actually, so I probably shouldn't say that. Maybe the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it was relatively calm. And now we've got this really interesting polarization going on.
Yeah.
And of course, Donald Trump is a factor in this, and Hillary Clinton is a factor in this, and just the whole crazy political nonsense that we've been experiencing for the last 10 years is a factor in this. And everybody seems to have taken sides and joined a tribe, and civil discussion is getting very difficult.
Yeah. I think, and I would say that what appears to me to be one of the accelerators of this is things like social media, is Facebook, because you have the ability to only see what you want to see, and to have so much reinforcement of your views and ideas. But even no matter how bad they are, right? It's like the more communication that people have, it almost reminds me of like the Tower of Babylon. It's like the more that people can communicate, the more that they can like very much dig their trenches.
The poor Babelfish, by effectively removing all barriers of communication, caused more and bloodier wars than anything else in history.
It's there we go. I didn't even make that connection.
When you really know what people believe.
Yeah. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
There you go.
Very nice. But yeah, well, it's unfortunate that you had to to get the backlash of that, but I'm glad that you stood up and that, and I think if there's any consolation, I think maybe more people became aware, because I think a lot of people were shocked to see that what people were doing to you, especially calling past employers. I'm like, do you realize that Bob Martin doesn't need a job? He's a famous, he just runs his own company. Like, what are you doing calling his past employer? Like, come on.
I mean, there was the negative side, of course, was the attacks and the nasty secret rumor mongering stuff behind the scenes. But I was very gratified. There was a very large cohort of people who stood up and said, "Hey, what the heck do you think you guys are doing?" And I think that had much more of an effect in shutting it all down.
Yeah,
because it did get shut down. It just went away.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, that's good. It's something though that I think that I don't know. I guess we'll see where this plays out. I'm just curious where this will go with society. And it's interesting just in tech. I've definitely been in my latest book, I have a chapter on women in tech, and I have one on dealing with prejudice and discrimination. And those are either very popular chapters or not very popular chapters at all.
It's very difficult to say stuff about that without offending a very large fragment of the society. Because everybody has their theories on why are the number of programmers 97% women in the Western world? what is driving that crazy statistic? And I don't know the answer to that. And I've asked a bunch of women and I've asked a bunch of men. No one can really give me a satisfying answer to that. And I've written a number of articles about it, trying to express my views. I always get in trouble when I do.
Right. Well, yeah, there's no solution to, I mean, there's, I mean, it's in my book, I talk about just the idea that like, got mostly, I mean, yes, there's maybe some societal constructs, but well, here's the other thing too. Like, if you think about this, society as it exists is part of the evolutionary process as well, right? I mean, like ants that live in a colony or bees that live in a colony, their societal constructs are actually part of the evolution. You can't have the evolution of an ant or a bee without their societal construct as well. So whether it is nature or nurture, doesn't matter. They're the same thing, actually. And then the idea is just, it's very simple. I mean, at least in my mind, I mean, this is my opinion, but men and women are different and they have different interests. And, you know, there's a, you know, I mean, there's a lot less hairdressers that are men. And if the hairdressers are men, there's a higher percentage of them that are gay or effeminate. That's just, I didn't invent this world. Like, you know, you can kill me for reporting the facts, but that's just, you know, just shows that there are a lot of areas that where there's more of it appeals more to men, and some things appeal more to women. And some of it has to do with society, but some of it doesn't. Some of it is just, that's just how it laid out. And, you know,
Moore got fired for saying that.
Yeah.
And so you've expressed an interesting opinion, right? And it's an opinion that says, well, gee, maybe there is some kind of innate biological reason for what we are seeing. And maybe that's true and maybe it's not, but it's certainly worth talking about.
Right.
It's not worth shutting down the conversation because you don't agree with this idea. Now, I mean, the counter to that idea is that in the 1950s, half the programmers were women. All of the programmers on the ENIAC were women, and they were doing pretty techie stuff. You know, that was patch panel programming. That wasn't, you know, writing a little bit of Java on a laptop. These guys were hooking wires up together. They were serious technical people. The word compiler was coined by a woman. The very first compiler ever written was written by a woman. What has happened to cause this transition? Is it some kind of biological innate thing, or is it some kind of societal structure? Or, as you say, is it that you can't take those two apart, that they evolved separately? And I don't know the answer to it. But I think that the conversation is worth having.
Oh yeah.
Not getting fired over.
Exactly. Well, see, and that's the thing is, like, you know, I'm, you know, I don't know. A lot of people call me sexist, racist, whatever, all the isms, right? That I'm one of these, you know, all the isms, whatever they are. And I don't like, you know, a lot of the, you know, I don't like a lot of the things that certain people represent, right? So I don't like white supremacists, but I like that they can speak. And it seems weird because, you know, I think a lot of people today, they're like, well, no. If something is so bad, we shouldn't even give any voice to it at all. We should just, and, you know, there's a really good book by an English philosopher called On Liberty, John Stuart Mills. Yeah. And in that book, I mean, he just details out the reasons why you have to let even the worst opinion, the worst idea be expressed. And one of the big things that he says is because how do you know that your idea is good if you're not hearing the counter, right? I mean, it's just an echo chamber. And it's amazing, you know, that there's certain idea. To me, it's like there's a lot of reprehensible ideas and people in this world.
Sure.
But I want them to speak. Well, one, so I can understand, so I can know who my enemy is, identify him, rather than people holding these ideas deep inside them and not expressing them, and you don't know who the enemy is or what they think. And two, so I can actually use that as a a sharpening block to sharpen my ideas against, so that I know that they are correct. And history has reversed ideas. I mean, back in the time of John Stuart Mills and slightly before then, I mean, not too long ago before then, we were burning people at the stake as a society because they didn't believe all of the doctrines of the church exactly 100%. And everyone was in agreement with that. I mean, for the most part, that was like the populace of society said, yes, this is cool. We definitely want to burn these people. Like, we don't want to hear what they have to say. So
you said something there that I think is really important, which is, how do I know that my ideas are any good if I cannot express them and
right.
test them against your ideas? So, the white supremacist wants to get up and talk. Well, am I going to listen to him carefully? Probably not. I'll hear a couple of words that he has to say, and then go, well, this guy's out to lunch. Never mind. But he ought to be able to say it and see my reaction, and then maybe hear the counter proposal or the counter idea, and maybe that person will begin to think otherwise. If you cannot express an idea, the ideas get trapped.
Right.
They can't come out. They can't get adjusted. They can't get maneuvered. But if you can express ideas, there can be a shift in the bad ideas. Again, it comes back to this idea that the best solution to a bad idea is a better idea, right. Not shutting down the bad idea.
Yeah, it's that calibration process, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like you're a professional speaker. You speak on stage, and it's much easier to speak when you're on, and you record videos. And I mean, you tell me, right? I mean, in my opinion, it's easier to speak on stage than it is to speak into a video camera, because you got feedback. You can calibrate your message, and a lot of things that I think are a good idea in my head, until once I say them out loud, I'm like, nope, that was not.
It is easier to speak on stage. That's certainly true. For me,
yeah,
I'll get in front of a crowd, and that's my favorite place to be, right? And
yeah.
I'll just start to speak. The trap there is that you can get caught in the feedback cycle.
Okay.
And then start saying things you didn't really mean to say.
Yeah.
Because the filter starts to turn off if you've got the crowd reaction going, and you can get the crowd excited about something. So it is an interesting risk that speakers like myself are faced with. I have to constantly look at what I'm saying and look at the crowd reaction and try and keep it on track. Right. Interesting challenge for a speaker. A little bit into the weeds for this discussion, but
no, that makes sense. Yeah, I've definitely had similar experiences. I've been known to yell on stage, and
yeah.
But it's fun. But I agree with you. There's no better feeling than being on stage, and especially when you're riling the crowd up to some degree. So
yeah, well, you and I share that same personality defect.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I totally agree with what you're saying, though, that it's like, again, everyone's going to have different opinions, and that's fine, but we've got to be able to express those opinions without the shaming. I mean, and that's the other thing, is like, I was thinking about this in terms of racism too. It's like, if someone's racist, I want them to say it in a place of almost safety, like why they're racist, right? Because here's the thing: if some dude is racist and he doesn't say anything, and he's just secretly racist, right? And he's just secretly treating people of certain, whatever ethnicity or race differently, and in his head he's like, I don't like this, racial slur, whatever. It does no good to society. But if he feels like, okay, I could say this, and I could say why I'm racist, and he could say, I don't like this group of people. You know why? And then when you ask him, and you say why, and he says, well, when I was 12, right? It'll come back to that story. When I was 12, I lived in this neighborhood, and my father did, worked, and these people, they came in and they did this, and I always got beat up and all this, right? And then you're like, oh, really? Okay. So now we can actually have a dialogue, because he feels safe to say that. And then maybe you have some chance of of making him realize that racism was just some bullshit that he was carrying around with him, some baggage, and there's no need to take this out on a whole. It's not all people are like that. But if he doesn't have that opportunity, if it's like, oh, he can't say anything because, oh, that's so horrible, you know what I mean? Then he's never going to, that understanding never takes place, because he's just prejudged, right, on something that we all have stereotypes. We all are prejudiced to some degree, and it's an innate biological wiring that happens because of events in our lives. It's just like, people have phobias of different. When people develop phobias, it's because they had some kind of traumatic event in their life that caused them to become fearful of that thing. We're wired to do that, and so it's amazing that, I mean, like I would rather, again, it's not like I want racists, just, like I want more but I feel like if you shame people, what you do is you kind of like, they're like, well, yeah, see, I told you, everybody hates me.
Exactly.
Right?
Especially if you do it secretly, especially if you break the rules to shut someone down intentionally, you're just proving their point for them.
Yeah.
Right? All of a sudden they say, oh yeah, the evil forces are attacking me, I must have been right all along. There's no engagement in ideas. It turns into a war of actions, and that's a bad outcome. I had an experience once. I was in England and I was giving a talk, and I put up a picture of Grace Hopper, the first woman who wrote the first person to ever write a compiler, the person who coined the word compiler. And I was making that point, and I had a picture of her up, and she was wearing the hat that was common for women in the Navy. And out of my mouth came these words, oh, there's Grace Hopper in her little hat.
Okay. Okay.
And I didn't think a thing of it, right? The words just came out, and I was going on. And it was, one little kind of funny joke or something like that. Afterwards, a woman that I know very well came up to me and said, that was hurtful. It's hard enough for women in our industry, and a little statement like that from someone of your stature really hurts. And I thought about that. I thought, she was dead right. I got caught up in the moment, and I said something that I didn't mean to be pejorative, but came out that way. And so I wrote a nice little apology and, published it and sent it around. Without her feedback, very personally, looking in the eye, I never would have acknowledged that. I wouldn't have understood it. I probably would have gotten on stage and said it again, because it got a good reaction. The crowd kind of went hitty, hitty, hitty. They were laughing a little bit. Without her coming to me and just very kindly and forthrightly telling me, I wouldn't have been able to change my opinion. But she did it the right way.
Right.
And she came to me and she made it clear. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay. So without the free exchange of ideas can't change.
Exactly. Right. And the way that it's all about the way that it's done, I think, too. And I might push back myself on the hat thing. I still think it's a pretty innocent little comment, but I can see the point. But that's the right way to go about it, right? And
sure,
it's all
I could have had Grady Booch up there and said, oh, look at his little goatee. But it was worthwhile for her to come to me and say, that was, given the situation in our industry and given the struggles that women have, that's probably not the right thing to say at that time. I could talk about Grady Booch and complain about his beard, and it doesn't matter, because men are 97% of programmers, right? So it's not going to be affecting the position of men in our industry. But talking about Grace Hopper's little hat could discourage yet one more woman. And I don't want to discourage any women from being programmers. We need all the women, we need all the people we can get in programming. We don't have enough. We don't have enough good ones.
As I said, I talked about in my book. I said, if I'm in the choice between hiring, two equally qualified people, and one of them's a smelly fat guy that hasn't showered in 3 days, and another one is a pleasant smelling woman, I'm going to hire the woman. So I'm going to totally agree with you. I want to sit next to someone who smells good, right? So you know. But
all else being equal, yeah, okay,
yeah, exactly. All other things being equal. But yeah, you know, I think it's kind of funny. I actually came across this, and I'm sort of on the fence on it because, you know, it to some degree my counter argument would be, okay, we need to, if we really want equal, you know, opportunity, then we need to treat men and women kind of equally as well. So like we can't be sensitive to saying little hat if we're not sensitive to saying little goatee, because and I don't know that we should be sensitive to either, because if we're putting on kid gloves and we're walking on eggshells, that's sort of like patronizing almost, right? So I mean, so I think there's that piece of it. But I had an experience where I did a YouTube live, and I did for some reason I decided, this is my crazy mind, Bob, but I have every Thursday I've been doing, let's take our shirts off and talk about. So
okay.
take my shirt off, get on the camera, everyone takes their shirt off. And
That doesn't exclude anybody.
no. Well, they can only see me. They don't they're not on camera. So my audience is well, my audience actually on YouTube here was 95 or 96% men. Now it's 90% men and 10% women. So it's been changing, which is good. Part of it's because I started dressing in nicer shirts, is what my wife tells me. But but I was on it, and I and people were asking me questions, and then this woman asked me a question, and my immediate reaction was, oh, hey, look, there's a woman in the man cave, right? And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I was like, and I asked her, and I said, oh, you better have your shirt off too. And that I felt okay, because I thought that was funny, and most people thought that was funny. But the fact that I had called out a woman for being like to me, like I was calling out that the fact that this was kind of a man cave, because it was like take your shirts off, and I thought it was just surprising me that there was a woman here in the take your shirts off, you know, session. So that's what I was thinking. But I realized immediately that that could be interpreted as, hey, look, there's a woman in technology, let's call her out because she, right? Which this was not that. And so I did get an email from a different woman who said, just like you said with the little hat story, very nicely she put it. She explained, you know, you wouldn't say like, look, there's a black guy in here. And I was like, yeah, that's true. I wouldn't say that. And so I actually issued an apology, but which is one of the rare times in life I almost never apologize, and the reason why is because I think people apologize too much, and they apologize because most people apologize in life because they're pressured to do it, not because they actually are. And so I did issue an apology, but then you know what happened when I issued the apology? The original woman who had said the question and who I had called out, she emailed me and she was mad.
Oh yeah,
and,
right.
And she said, how dare, like you, she didn't say how dare you. I mean, she was kind of nice too, but she said, you know, you treated, like you should have just stuck with your, like what you said was fine. I thought it was funny with the joke, with the shirts off. I don't care. I'm a woman in tech. I'm, you know, I know that there's mostly men here. And like, I felt like maybe you're walking on eggshells a little bit, or maybe you're like, you know what I'm saying? So the opposite. And so I kind of saw her. So I kind of walked the line, and you know, the reason why I had issued the apology had more to do with I felt like my intent might have been misunderstood, because my advice to guys with dealing with women tech is always, hey, just treat them normal, just like normal, like don't make a thing of it. Don't be overly bending backwards to help them, but because that's patronizing, and don't be assholes and send them dick pics and stuff like that. Don't do that. Like just normal, just like it's any other person you're dealing with. Like, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't say, oh, look, hey, it's a Latino guy, let me go and help this guy. Oh, it's cool that you're in tech. I didn't realize Latino guys could program. That's awesome. Let me help you. Like, it's the same thing. So I don't know. That's why I say I'm on the fence on it. But
I was in Greece the other week, as I said, and I was sitting down at dinner with Sandro Mancuso. I mentioned him before, and somebody else who was a woman was there, and she was one of the speakers. And we got onto this topic, you know, women in tech and the whole Doug Crockford thing and this and that. And she said this fascinating thing. She said, I have a suspicion that the reason I am here and was invited is that they needed to have some women, and that it wasn't because I had earned the position. It's just because I was a woman. And she was upset about this. She said,
Yep.
if that's true, it's horrible.
Exactly.
And I could only acknowledge her and say, yes, if it were me, if people were inviting me to a conference, not because of my ideas and my work, but because of my gender, that would be horrible.
We see that almost all conferences are doing this now. This is the crazy thing, is that they're actually promoting the fact that they have that they're calling it diversity, but it's forced diversity. So that's not diversity at all. That's a social construct, if anything. And it's the same. It's exactly what you said, because I would never want to, like, and she can't know. Here's the worst thing about it is she can't know. There's no way to know whether or not, because she met some quota. So would she have gotten invited had she not met that quota? Had she been a man? And I can talk from direct experience here, because when I worked at HP, there was this guy. I'm Turkish and Italian. A lot of people think that I'm Latino, and this guy that was Latino, he told me, he said, I was trying to get a job at HP because I was a contractor, and he said, hey, you can get a job because you're Latino. So that's how I got my job. So it's really easy for us, man. Like, and he was giving me these details, and he was trying to do a nice thing for me, but I was like, man, I really hope that if I get a job, that it has nothing to do, because I rather, like, I would never ever want that. you know what I mean? Like, to his mind, it was like an opportunity to take advantage of it. But to me, I'm like, well, I want to earn everything I have in life on my own merits.
Yes.
And if someone takes that ability away from me, that would really upset me. And I feel like in a lot of cases, the reason why I'm against the whole diversity thing has nothing to do with, I love seeing women into, like I said, women smell better than men. I'm just gonna put that down as a fact. Okay. and I would love to see more women on stage and everything in the technology field. Of course, most guys would, honestly, but I would hate I would hate for them. The reason why I'm against it is because I hate the fact that people won't know if it was a meritocracy, or if it was just, right, hey, you're the right, oh, you're a black woman, damn, yeah, that's awesome, because we could use you. We need to use you, right? I just don't understand how
we need to use you to make us look better.
Yeah. So okay, so let's we've at this point we've definitely polarized the audience.
I hope not. I hope. Although it was certainly a discussion that was on a particular side, I hope people can watch this and think, well, there are ideas here that I ought to listen to.
Yeah.
Right? Well, and I don't want to chase anybody away from the discussion.
No, I think, and I say this all the time. Some people are going to be upset, and they're like, oh, John and Bob, they're racist or whatever, or sexist or whatever. But if you sit down and I think I can't speak for you, but like I have friends of all, like I will treat you better than just about any person that I know, and I think that probably the same thing from what I know about you, Bob, is like you treat everyone awesome. But I mean that's how I think this is something that we both agree on. So
I believe we do. So
let's talk a little bit about your new book, if you will, because this is an exciting thing for me, because your books are always so good. Okay.
I didn't have a copy before. It just came like about 3 days ago, right? So I got a copy. I'm very excited.
So tell me what's this one? So there, Clean Code was awesome. I learned how, that was one of the books that really taught me to write good code. Like it made a huge difference in my career. And then Clean Coder, how to act as a software developer and how to be a professional. I like that. It was that was good. And now we've got Clean Architecture. So why the new book, and where does Clean Architecture go?
Clean Architecture is the book that I wrote these books out of order, right? So
Okay.
an early book that I wrote was Agile Software Development Principles, Patterns, and Practices. And in that book, I outlined a great deal about software design, making the mid-level design decisions in an application. And then I wrote Clean Code, and that was all about low-level stuff, right? You know, how do you name a variable, and what size should a function be? And while I was writing Clean Code, there was all of this behavioral stuff that I wanted to put in that book, but I didn't think belonged. So as soon as I shipped Clean Code to the publisher, I immediately started pouring out all of this professionalism stuff into the Clean Coder book. That was just kind of a convulsion. And then after that, I thought I was done, frankly.
Yeah.
This is the magnum opus. I'm done. I'm not writing another book. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I started noticing that the level of dependency on frameworks was growing and growing and growing. And the frameworks were coming out of the woodwork. And as I looked at the code written by folks using the frameworks, the code was all about the frameworks and not about the application. The application was incidental to the framework. You look at their code, oh, this is a Rails app, oh, that's an Angular app, or whatever. It's the framework and not the use cases. And that kind of twigged something in the back of my brain, is that, okay, there's another message that I need to write about. And it's the promotion of the business rules and the use cases to first-class software objects. The architecture of a system is about the intent of the system, not about the frameworks and the technology. So that's really what the book is about. And
Okay.
There's loads of technology in the book. I mean, it's a deeply technical book, but the purpose of the book is the use of that technology to promote the high-level policies and business rules to first-class software objects and separate from the details and identify what the details are. A lot of people think, that the framework is not a detail. All the frameworks are details. All the frameworks are tools that you can shove off into the back. You don't want them infiltrating the core of your system. Databases are details. GUIs are details. Dependency injection is a detail. All of this stuff is microservices are details. They're not an architecture. There's no such thing as a microservice architecture. Microservices are little tools that you can use at the bottom to implement the true architecture of the use cases. So given that rant, that's what the book is about.
Okay, that I like that. That makes a lot of sense. As you were describing that, I was thinking about how weird it would be if we're walking around a city and seeing buildings and we're like, that's a steel building. And I know because I can see the steel rebar in the it's like the externals of the framework, being the thing that's on display, as opposed to, I think, good architects in the building world hide you don't know what's the internal. It doesn't matter.
The technology is not apparent. A good building, the architecture of a good building tells you the intent of the building.
Right.
You recognize a church. It's obviously a church. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely become something, especially with all the JavaScript frameworks that have been popping up here. I think more and more developers, and it's especially the younger developers that are just getting into the field, or anyone getting just into the field, they're seeing it as framework, as opposed to the higher idea of the framework is that detail. So in the book, then, I would assume, then, do you outline and show how to create these abstractions, but so that someone can actually design the architecture of the application, so it's somewhat independent of the underlying framework, or that thing could change, or are you advocating that level of abstraction, or is it okay?
Yeah. So you want to decouple from the framework to the extent that if the framework evolves in a direction that no longer suits your application, you can find a different framework and replace it. And the replacement would not necessarily be easy, but it would be possible, right?
Right.
If you're using a database and, at some point the database company goes out of business or the license fees get too large, you should have the option of being able to look around and say, wow, there's another database over here. And it might be hard, but at least it's possible. I've got the boundaries built. I've got the separation to the point where it would be possible. And even if you are never planning on changing out one of these things, it is still a better structure to have your business rules isolated from the whims of whatever's going on in the database or the GUI or the framework, so that you can claim that your business rules are really pure business rules.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It was, the first time I think I really encountered that where it made a difference was when I was developing an iOS and an Android app. This was,
yeah, there you go.
with, this was before Xamarin Forms. I was using Xamarin, but before Xamarin Forms. And I remember, I started taking all the framework stuff and I started putting that into its own section, own files, and making it, some of it seemed a little bit ridiculous, but it served a really good purpose because I had to implement the same stuff in Android and iOS, and there were differences. And so I wanted all of the place where I was coding the logic of the application to be totally neutral. No one even knows that we know what if this is Android or iOS as much as possible. And it was if I hadn't done things that way, it would have been a bunch of if defs and
yeah, or just a complete rewrite.
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. I think now one of the things that I've always believed that that's the right way to do it. And it's funny, I think people get carried away. I like how you said, because I think people get carried away and they're like, well, I need to make sure I can switch out this database. And you can't, if you write code in that way, like you said, I think if you could, it might be hard to do, but at least you've encapsulated most of that logic in some one place where you're operating at a higher abstraction. But what about frameworks like Angular.js, or a lot of these, like I said, JavaScript frameworks, where it's so much integrated into the system that, for Angular.js developers, it's almost like that is the paradigm. Like they're so used to doing things that way. How do you see them taking that and separating it out and still being able to pull out, so that they're not totally working in the framework, so that the framework doesn't leak into every part of the application?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on how the framework is designed, so I really couldn't comment deeply in the technology. My sense and my hope is that it would be possible to isolate the business rule parts of whatever the JavaScript is doing from the control mechanisms of the framework. And a framework that is not designed to allow that is a framework that, in my opinion, has no long future. Right. Because you're going to come right into the problem that you discussed with the Android and the iOS app. Eventually, you're going to want to do this separation for one reason or another. And if the framework doesn't allow it, well, then that's a big problem. Now, I have a fair bit of experience with something like Rails, and Rails has this sense that it seems to infiltrate everything, but in fact, it doesn't. If you are careful about it and you look at it as a tool as opposed to a paradigm, then you can nicely isolate Ruby code, business rule Ruby code, from Rails-ish kind of stuff. It's possible. I presume that's true in Angular, but I don't know. I have no experience with Angular.
Okay. I'm not very experienced in Angular as well. I just figured that people are going to definitely ask this question based on this, because there are a lot of Angular developers out there now. It's it's really interesting though. I think that this concept, because it does seem like it's lost now. I think I remember back. It's been so long since I've written code. it's so sad.
Don't let this happen. You have to write code.
I'm moving in a different direction with my career. I'm pretty much like in the soft skills guy area, I think, of software development, but I do miss it. So. But I remember back when I remember writing about only two roles of code, that either the code is logic or it's wiring code, and to separate things out. And I've always tried to design my architectures that way, which it sounds very similar concept there. So So what are you, are you going to write yet another book after this? What's next?
Well, see, that's the problem. Having written this book, I've identified 3 more I need to write. I thought I was done, and
Yeah.
now I realize, oh man, I've got 3 more I've got to write. So I've got the next one is starting to flow out of my fingers, and then I've got a backlog of several others. So,
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, it's quite an undertaking to write a book. So
I'm not about 3 years to write a book.
Yeah.
So now I know what my next 9 years are.
Well, at least you got it planned out. Yeah, it took me the last book the one that I just published, I did it 6 months, but mine's not a technical book, so it's a little easier to write things that flow, that you can just write without having to go and put all the technical into it. And what I did this time was I did an hour a day for 6 months, just like I just set a Pomodoro timer and did that. How do you do your books? How do you do you work in bursts, or do you have?
It's very bursty for me.
Okay.
I will go through a week of intense creativity, and I'll write 2 or 3 chapters, and then it'll sit for 2 or 3 weeks, and then another big burst will come out. And it's just the way I work.
Yeah.
It's also reinforced by the fact that 1 week I'm on the road, and then the next week I'm home. So my travel schedule makes it very difficult to write books when you're traveling.
Sure. Okay. Well, I definitely everyone who's listening, you should go check out Clean Architecture, get yourself a copy of it, because
2 or 3.
Yes,
Yeah,
gift them.
Good on the coffee table.
Exactly. Gift them to other developers that need it,
In-laws love them.
Yes. But yeah, I definitely like I said, I got to get a copy, get my copy. I'm going to have to order a copy. It's I've been conflicted, because I'm like, well, man, I'm not writing code anymore. So, but I'm still, I don't want to get sucked in. I have to be careful. It's so easy. I just want to code up. It's funny running a business and too now, because I'm like, oh, I could code. Better not.
See, that's the one of the disciplines that I do maintain, is that I will write some code every week.
Yeah.
Right? No one pays me to write code anymore. That's just not realistic. But I get my fingers on the keyboard. I am writing some kind of code every week. My audience is coders, and I have to be a coder.
Yeah. No, I definitely respect that. I mean, you're one of the few people that has been through, it continued to maintain that ability to write code over the length of your career, which a lot of people have not. I mean, myself included. I mean, I'm not looking down on them, because that myself included. So it's amazing to see that, and especially that the things that you've done have changed over the years. But what's remained the same? The principles, which is also, you're kind of a living testament to that, is that those same principles, the same stuff that you wrote in Agile principles, practices, and patterns, I always say it wrong, and clean code still applies. And it didn't matter whether you're doing Ruby on Rails, or when you're doing C# or any of those languages. It didn't matter.
That is the case. The principles remain the same. And primarily because, although we use different languages and different frameworks, this is still software, and software really hasn't changed much in 40 years.
Yeah.
Hardware has.
Oh yeah. I'm excited to see what happens with the VR stuff. Have you dabbled in that at all?
Only, the kind of stuff that you go to a conference and you put the goggles on and land an airplane. Okay, that's fun.
Yeah.
We'll see where this goes. It's right now I haven't been real impressed with the visual technology. I know it's getting better. I've got some friends who have VR goggles now, and they're doing it all the time. So it's definitely cool. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. I wasn't sold on it until I got an Oculus Rift as a gift, and then when I put it on and played, I mean, the resolution is not, definitely it's not as good as it hopefully will get. But when I put it on, I was like, gosh, I don't know if I ever want to play a game that's not VR anymore, because it just, it was, it was that jump from the Viewmaster to like the last time I think I saw VR, it was like this Nintendo had this Game Boy VR thing, and that was not very good. And so
yeah.
I was pretty impressed. But well, definitely thank you for joining me, Bob, and thanks for being so candid about about the stuff that's going on. I think people just need to hear this stuff, and whether they agree with us or not, I don't care. Like, it's like, let's just have the discussion and let's be humans, and not like, let's not dehumanize people just because they have what we consider to be a vile opinion, right? I mean, just...
I do not cop to having a vile opinion.
I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the people that disagree with us. No.
Well, okay, but I'm not going to allow them to say, well, your opinion is vile, without coming back at them. My opinions are not vile.
Exactly.
Either are yours, I assume, right? So we just have something to talk about, and we need to do the talking.
Yeah. I think we need to look at more of the intent of people. Because words are misplaced, and they may have different meanings. Definitions change, right? I mean, it depends on the person, what they mean, right? But intent is usually a little more discernible. At least malice is, maybe. I don't know. Let's just give people the benefit of the doubt. That's what.
How about that for an idea?
Yeah. But anyway, I appreciate you being candid about it and talking about this kind of stuff, because a lot of people are afraid to talk about this, and we just need to do this, because especially if you're being, we can't let the tactics of bullying be the one that wins the day, because if that becomes the way that the world works, is that bullying is the way that and shaming people is the way that we change things. I think I'd rather see bloody revolutions than bullying and shaming, honestly. But
well, I think one leads to the other.
I think so. I think you're right. I think So definitely, guys, check out Clean Architecture and cleancoders.com with the S, right? Clean Coders.
Yes, that's correct. That's where the videos are.
I remember from last time that I forgot the S. So cleancoders.com. Bob has awesome videos. Like we're saying, he's awesome on stage, but also if you want to see him dressed up like in Star Trek, I mean, he really takes it to the dramatic. He's got a flair for the dramatic. So he creates, and he does the thing that I always tell you guys on this channel, which is before you can educate, you have to entertain first. Bob entertains first. So
if it's not fun, it's not worth doing.
Exactly. I agree with you. All right, Bob. Thanks again for joining, and appreciate it. And I wish you well with this book and with your next 3 books for the next 9 years.
Thanks very much. Same to you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.